Hey, greetings and welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast. As always, I'm joined by David Berner. My name is Jeremy Mikla, and we're here today. We're sharing our reflections on an event that David and I both attended yesterday, which was Wednesday, April 23rd. At the Union Depot building in downtown St. Paul, that was put on by Instructure. Some of you might know Instructure. They are the company behind the LMS Canvas. They also are behind the Learn platform, which I know we've discussed on this show a few different times. And they put on a great event focusing on AI literacy, AI guidance, and how that's playing out in schools across the country, but more with a Minnesota sort of focus. We had some great speakers, including Amanda Bickerstaff, who is the developer of AI for Education with her website and the content that she puts on there. I know I've definitely shared out her prompt library that she has on her website, which is absolutely fantastic if you're looking for templates and ideas for how to create prompts to get the best results possible. But then we were also joined by the educational technology team from Bloomington Public Schools here in Minnesota, who shared lots of great stuff about the work that they're doing there to develop policy and, well, not so much policy, I guess guidance, right? That is really focusing on students and teachers and buildings and districts and even the community, and how they're trying to tie all of those things together to create a learning environment that is going to include the best that AI has to offer, as well as making it a positive experience for instruction and for learning. So again, a huge shout out to Instructure for hosting that event. Not only did we see and meet some great people, they also put on some pretty great food spreads that they laid out for us too, didn't they, David?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because the whole event was free, and I just thought Instructure did a really nice job of they really got the message across. I feel like that they just wanted people to be there for the event and to take in what they were providing, not just food, but really great ideas. I actually have to give a special shout out to Amanda Bickerstaff because just by chance, I guess, we ended up talking. We had like a 30-minute meeting, and she mentioned the event to me, which was great because I had not really heard about it. And I was like, wait a second, this is free. So we can go to this for free, and it's in St. Paul. It's like, so basically I checked to see if I could make the 2.5-hour trek up to St. Paul from Marshall. And then I was like, Jeremy, you got to meet me there. So we ended up going for free, got some really great ideas from it. Instructure did a really nice job of putting on, I would say, a variety of sessions that, starting with Amanda, and that was the longest session. And man, I don't know about you, but it felt like it was like 10 minutes. It was like it just went by really fast, and it was super good. And if you're not following Amanda or AI in Education on LinkedIn, I would definitely recommend doing that so you can see some of the work that they're doing. They've worked with a lot of schools, and that was really the premier piece of the event as the keynote. And then there was a number of other folks. I think Jeremy already mentioned like Bloomington Schools, and that's doing some really good work with AI guidance.
Yeah, we'll be sure to add some of those links that we've already mentioned and maybe a couple of more into the show notes after the episode is over. But yeah, no, I really thought that team did a great job. And it was really nice to meet some of those people. I'd been in on a couple of webinars from a couple of people that had presented. I know they've been featured by Common Sense, the Common Sense Media platform. So, definitely they're coming from, I think, a great area of expertise, and, but yet at the same time, they realize that they're still in the trenches and doing all of the hard work. And what is really neat is that everyone that was there was just so willing to share everything that they knew in the directions that they were heading. And, being facilitated by Instructure, an ed tech vendor, right? A company that is trying to sell their product and make money. I didn't feel like much of the day at all was a sales pitch, right? It was more, I think, about they're trying to do what's best for education and for educators. And, again, to Kirk and to Ryan, who put it on from Instructure, just again, our huge thanks. But I think, David, we kind of want to get into what were some of the key takeaways that, the memorable moments, the top 5, right, that we had. And so I'm going to start here. And again, these aren't really in any particular order of what we thought were most important, but we just thought that these were things that we wanted to make sure that we share out to an audience, as well as things that maybe you're considering as you work towards how are you going to implement AI literacy, and what sort of policies, or better word is guidance. I got to kind of shift and pivot my vocabulary with that, because policy sometimes comes with the consequences part, but we want to focus on those positive directions that we want teachers to go, which is the guidance part. But one of the first ones that stuck out to me, David, and was this idea of AI literacy as being an essential skill for students beyond the K-12 classroom space, that this is a college and career skill that is being looked for by employers across the country. I know I read an article probably about a month ago that I found. It was from LinkedIn. And based upon LinkedIn's own internal data of key things that employers are looking for in 2024 and 2025, the number one skill that they want for future employees is AI literacy. So, I mean, we could see that this is a direction that things are going. That AI literacy by the next 5 years that AI is really changing that landscape of jobs, is really what I'm trying to say. That in the next 5 years, that we are projecting that there's going to be about 170 million new jobs that are going to come about because of AI. But at the same time, with that growth, there's going to be a little bit of retraction in some areas, and they're projecting that about 92 million jobs globally are going to be displaced. But it still is going to be a huge net gain of opportunities for a lot of people, as long as those people have those skills. It is definitely one of those things that we can't shy away from. We can't bury our heads in the sand and definitely pretend that it doesn't exist,
Yeah. And I would say that I think Amanda did a nice job too about like how people used to put on their resume that it was, when you listed on your resume that you were proficient in Excel, Microsoft Excel, that was like, whoa, that's really
spreadsheets.
Wow, impressive. But now the new thing is it's taking that out, and it's like AI literacy, right, is what everybody is looking for. And I think that's what I think a lot of the conversations are going to center around with. I know you and I work with a lot of different schools, and it's like that's what really we should be telling them to focus on as a foundational concept, right?
Right. And have that plan. How are you going to make student and teacher, and administrator, AI literacy a key component of what your goals are for the 25-26 school year coming up?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that all leads into my first takeaway. So takeaway number 2 from Jeremy and I from the event is that the AI is now everything is going to be like lifelong learning, right? It's not just like you learn something in high school or you learn something in college and you move on. It's like everything is it's going to be a part of every piece of your life, from your school career to your actual work career, and how AI literacy is going to be involved in all of that, and is the foundational concept. One thing that I really took away, and we talked about this, was that if you're a school district and your thought is to not start the process of talking about AI literacy, or if you're just ignoring it altogether, you're actually doing your students a disservice, because the student access to that is going to help them begin their learning process. So that when we talk about that lifelong learning, you want to get them started on that so that they're not operating from behind, right? And so, and one of the things that kind of blew my mind yesterday and really hit home was that even the districts that are trying to meet AI head on, right? We have districts that have been very proactive in AI and what they're trying to do with it, or just trying to understand it, right? Wrap their heads around it. They're One of the things that we almost have to pull back and do is start to talk about AI literacy as a foundation, because there was a graphic yesterday that stood out, and we talked about where you have a variety of school districts. There's like four approaches to AI, right? One of them is that you're just ignoring it altogether. One of them is that you're trying to learn about it, or no, I'm sorry. Number two was you're waiting, right? You're like waiting to see kind of where it goes. You're not opposed to it, but you're just trying to navigate, like, which makes sense. I mean, I totally understand that. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty around it. I think that's getting better. And then number three is like, okay, you've had some training, but everyone's just kind of on their own. This teacher's using that tool, and this school is using that tool, or we have one that's piloting and one that's not. And I think the fourth piece of that, the approach, which is the most important, is the organizational approach. And so there's some questions that districts should be asking about AI literacy and how that is going to be, defining what that means, and not only what that means for your students, but what does that mean for your AI team at your school? What does that mean for your administrative team at your school, the staff and the students, right? The whole picture is how I would say. And Amanda did a great job of laying out those four different approaches, and talking about how they're, the first three that I just mentioned, that's kind of where everybody is. And we really need them to get to the fourth approach. And then I think we'll see a lot of things around AI literacy, and everything will kind of start to fall in place a little bit better. But anyway, that's my way to rip off of yours. So
no, and definitely, and I think that leads almost into the next key takeaway that I really had here too, was about the potential here of AI. And I think you and I obviously agree that its potential to deeply transform education is just so immense. And I hate to make that sound like it's, it's probably stated way too much, but that potential is just so great. And if you want to think about it, and I'm stealing a little bit from Amanda's presentation, also talking about some of the impacts that we can see almost right now, that AI can have in your education, in your instruction, is, facilitating some of that personalized learning, right? Finding ways to connect the content that you already have to a greater diversity of students. And there's many different ways to do that through your lesson plans, through asking it to create real world examples, maybe of math problems that pertain to the interest areas of different schools. Looking at how it can be used to improve some of your instructional practices, like, hey, give it the lesson the presentation that you've given the last 5 years, right? And say, let's put a modern, fresh spin and takeaway on this. Is one thing. The abilities that it's having, and she showed some of the timelines of the progression of AI in different areas. And one of them that I found kind of fascinating was the ability to translate. And we can see that the ability of AI to start translating from English to other languages, or other languages to English, or whatever, it is rising up to the point where it is at or surpassing what human potential ability is currently, right? And all of this has happened in just this short period of time, even since generative AI which has been around for probably 10-ish years or so, but not really accessible by people till ChatGPT comes out with that 3.5 model, which was November of 2022. Yeah. So, I mean, we're only talking about 2.5 years, time
21
period.
actually, I think. Yeah. But
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just been so great. But there's also, I think, undeveloped potential that is just right out there, just on the horizon that we're going to get to. And Amanda called it kind of, what to look for in the medium term, right? Not too far out. She wasn't willing to prognosticate beyond kind of that 5-year outlook. But I mean, it is going to have great transformations in areas of teachers are going to be able to make their own customized curriculum, based upon their standards, their district guidance, as well as the needs of themselves and their students. So just a great potential there. The ability to tap into a 24/7 online support network. And I know we're starting to see some of that stuff. Like I think Khan Academy that has Conmigo just is like fantastic, right? And some of that stuff that they have out there about that. How it could lead to maybe even the development of some new assessment models just is just great. But also at the same time, I think we also still need to keep reminding people of some of the limitations of AI, and that aren't going away anytime soon. The limited knowledge bases that it is trained on sometimes, which could be potentially biased, is something we need to consider, as well as the propensity of it perhaps to hallucinate. And I know those are definitely warning things, that you and I have talked about in the past too.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And one of the things too that we talked about was just we have Matt Miller. This is kind of a little bit of
You
an
wanted me to
announcement.
show the screen here now? I see you've got it loaded there.
Yep, yeah. So we can throw Matt up on the screen there.
There we go.
And so one of the things we have that's really exciting is Matt Miller is actually going to be keynoting at our AI symposium that we have coming up on May 16th. And he talks a lot about in his AI for Educators book. And we talked a bit about this with him on our upcoming podcast release on May 1st. So next week here, he talks about tomorrow glasses, right? Like preparing your students for what is to come, rather than like we want to be able to see what's coming forward, get them prepared for that. And I think that the AI literacy goes hand in hand with that. But yeah, we have a great conversation with him that's coming out next week. And so you won't want to miss that when we release that. And then the event itself actually is in our SWWC. We have the event up. We're very excited to have Matt join us, and we'll have a bunch of other breakout sessions as well that will be centered around AI guidance and literacy and some tools, which I'm also excited that Jeremy's going to be doing a tool with some other members on our team, Kyle and Megan. So very exciting stuff. We'll have a lot of great things coming your way with that. So, but yeah, so to get into the next takeaway I have, it's a bit about being proactive. So districts really should start to look at what they're doing with AI literacy. And I think that we keep talking about the foundation, and what that means is to define what AI literacy means for all those groups all the stakeholders that are in your school district. And so as a singular school district, you want to start the process of defining AI literacy. And also I'm a big advocate for this, and it's creating a cross-functional team. It's having people involved in your team that is consistently setting up a meeting to be talking about AI and its impact on all these groups. So defining what AI literacy means for your school, having a cross-functional team. And Amanda pointed out yesterday, and I think this is a really, really great point, is that doesn't mean like having people on your team that just like AI, right? Or having people on your team that are just good at AI. It's having people on your team that have a variety of perspectives that are able to offer something to that group that really takes in the whole of the school district. So your individual school district should have this. And you should include people who hate AI. Like, it's funny to say, but it honestly needs to have people on there that don't like it that much. And, having that team is going to be the start of the AI literacy foundation, because what Amanda talked about yesterday, and I think is a great point as well, is those people on your team, whether they hate AI or not, you want that cross-functional team to be the first ones that are AI literate, right? They understand AI literacy, and you're setting those definitions and what that means, and then working off of that, and then that will trickle down to the rest of the staff and the students, right? And then from there, it's kind of like you've got that base, and then it's gathering consistent evidence once you've started to implement some things with your school district. And then from there, right, developing guidelines. And we've seen a number of guidelines in presented in different ways. I think, Jeremy, is like we obviously are working off of like MDE. MDE has their guidelines. I know with our region, so the Southwest West Central region, we've had a number of tech integrationists in our area and our own team working together to kind of break down the MDE guidelines and try to determine, okay, these 5 areas, what does that mean? And then what does that look like in template form, so districts can start to digest that and actually come up with a plan. And the team that we've worked with have done a really great job on that. But then, like yesterday, we saw where you have like Bloomington, right? They did a really great job with, I think, the guidelines around like what tools to use and when do they make sense for students, when, those type of things that I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think I heard MDE mentioned, like the guidelines really when they were up there. But they did a really nice job of laying out like their guidelines from, right, thinking about AI literacy, having their team, gathering evidence from the staff and students, and then developing guidelines around usage, right? So I think that all of that is extremely important, and I really would like to see more and more districts start to tackle this. And I think you and I, having similar roles, we're here to support our districts to do that. So, yeah.
And I'd say I see much of the same stuff with schools that are around that I work with as well. Like they need a little bit of support in that area, which, I think going to events like this one, they're able to hear from some different perspectives of groups that are out there and they're trying to do this. But the key thing is you can't just let it lie. You have to pick it up and you have to run with it. And I think it kind of, just like you said, put the team together, right? And having that team together, even with skeptics, even, consider bringing in parents or community members into that mix as well. And even students, right, is going to help create, I think, the type of, you talked about also a little bit earlier, that organizational, stage that you want to get to with AI literacy. And I think that's definitely on that roadmap to be able to get there. And I think one other thing that you just mentioned here too, that really stuck out to me as I think something that gets forgotten, but is extremely important, is the evaluation piece. As things progress and as things change, are you looking at how your guidance that you're providing in your district is working, or what policies and things you suggest for your teachers to implement as it relates to AI? If you're not going back and changing those things, using feedback, using experiences that you have gone through to try to continuously improve, I think then we're all wasting our time. If it's going to be a one and done, this is our policy set in stone, and it can never bend, it can never break. It's not going to be a model for success.
Right. And it seems to me that all of this kind of centers around communication. Like if you have open communication lines through all these different things that we're talking about, like, with the AI literacy and defining that as a school district and your team, establishing your team, talking constantly to teachers and to students, having open lines of communication are going to actually allow this to be much easier of a process. And like you said, keeping them open, because as we know, changes have happened fast and they'll continue to happen too. So
exactly. And how far out are we willing to predict? So you have to kind of have that flexibility, that agility even,
Right.
I think we're kind of setting up here for the last takeaway here that we have, kind of, I think, ties into some of your team building that you talked about too. And that is what the goal should be is not to create a building full of experts when it comes to AI. But what we want to do is we want to be able to build the capacity within all of the people in our districts to be able to approach AI with that lens that it can be an effective educational tool, right? And it's a tool, right? We want to be able to describe when are the right times to use that tool and when are the best times to put that tool back on the shelf. And I think by building that capacity within the teams that you work with, whether it's a grade level team, a department team, a content team, whatever it happens to be, with whatever your role is I think extremely important. And I tell you, even with the changes, I sometimes feel overwhelmed, and I spend a lot of my day looking at different AI related things, but something new catches me off guard, and a person from that I would never expect is talking to me about some AI tool, and I'm like, I've never heard of that. And and I'm thinking, like, you spend your time in a classroom full of fifth graders all day long, and when do you have time to learn about this tool that I've never heard of? Like, you're catching me off guard. And that's the moments that I stop and remind myself I'm not an expert on it all. And I don't think I ever will be, but I can continue to build capacity to be able to explore even more.
Right. And I think it's great that you say that because what we heard Amanda say yesterday is like, this is a really interesting moment in time because we all are learning this together. So we're all trying to figure it out. And like, sure, like someone may have heard of something that you had not, or, like an idea, but it's like, okay, so take that idea, right? And then, like you said, build capacity. So you're learning from somebody, they're learning from you, and it's actually really nice. I would say what I've seen online and just talking with people is that the community around this is really great. I would say about sharing things out, being willing to help others to increase their own capacity, right? And like you and I have shared things, like there's things you haven't heard of that I've shared, and things I've never heard of that you've shared, and it's like, man, we're all just trying to stay up on it.
And it's not like we're trying to get the scoop on one another, like, hey, I heard about this first, let me show you. It's really about, hey, this is a great thing. I'm going to share it out there because someone else might have another use for it. Someone else might take and run with it much further than I ever could because my capacity in that area might be at its limit, but someone else it's just expanding. So that was really kind of a neat, I think, a thing that I gleaned out of it yesterday. So well, good. It was a great event, and we're excited to be able to implement some of the things in the different parts of our jobs that we have coming up. I know with you, and you've got your AI symposium coming up next month. I know you've got some other things that are on your burner, not to be punny, but that you've got coming up where you're going to be doing a lot of work with Cozen, working to help districts implement AI guidance on their teams. And so I think, I've got some presentations that are coming up to districts around me as well as a couple of conferences that are going to be happening here in June, and in August that I'll be a part of. But being able to take some of these things that we learned here today, these takeaways, and implement them into future projects that we have, I think is going to be huge.
Yep. Yeah. And I would just say, leave the door open to people sharing stuff and share with others. I think it's really good. That's, I think, what has been really nice about what we do, because we're two totally different organizations, but and we
Mhm.
provide the same services in different areas, but we are at each other's conferences and different things, and it's all just continuous learning. So
That's
I think
right.
it's great. So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us here for this edition of the Integrate This EdTech podcast. And, as David pointed out earlier today, make sure that you're tuning in next time. If you're still listening to us now, that's great. But next time, Matt Miller, we've had a great conversation with him. And I know there's going to be a lot of great stuff that you can use to build your own capacity and take away from it. So,
Yep.
Great. Till next time, we'll see ya.
Thanks, everybody.